connect to their inner wisdom and higher self, which can uncover and heal the roots of limiting fears and beliefs. He specializes in past life regression therapy, life between lives therapy, oh, that's interesting, and also present life deep emotional trauma healing of the body and subconscious mind. He has a private practice in St. Paul, and he also has his own website. So if you want to learn more, it's www.ericjchristopher.com. He's spoken here before, and I've come away with some nuggets of inspiration, I guess I would call it. So please help me welcome back Eric Christopher.
Thank you, Ella. It's great to be back here again. Thank you for inviting me back to Lake Harriet Spiritual Community to speak on this midwinter morning. It's a joy to be here. Thank you. Today I'm going to divide my presentation here into two different parts. The first part, I'm going to talk about spiritual awakening. I'm going to share about a fascinating book I've read recently. I'm going to share about a case study. The second part, I'm going to guide you on an inner journey to connect to your own higher self and source energy. And that's what I hope to do today. But and by the way, while we're in that source energy, we're going to do an exercise to help support this month's theme, which is about from vision to reality. So it's great to be back here again. What I like about this place so much is that it's such a place to help people grow and evolve and awaken spiritually. And we're all on a path, whether we know it or not, to awaken spiritually. And some of us have been on that path for many years now. Some of us will begin that path in 2 months, maybe 2 years, maybe in 20 years, and maybe in 3 lifetimes. But as souls, ultimately, we're here to awaken to the truth. And what I mean by spiritual awakening, I mean awaken to the truth that we are these eternal soul beings and we're having a spiritual experience here. I mean, a human experience. We already are these eternal soul beings using these bodies. And that's just a concept for some. But when that really begins to sink in, then it can be a game changer. A lot of subtle fears begin to melt away. Fears of death, fears of not being good enough, fears, any limiting beliefs or thoughts that hold us back in life, that dim our own light so it doesn't shine. So that's when you really begin to know your true nature in a deep way and live from that. Those fears begin to melt away. One of my favorite spiritual teachers is named Adi Ashanti. Some of you may have heard of him, but one day somebody asked Adya, "What does enlightenment mean to you?" And every time they ask him a question like that, he always has a different answer. But one particular time he answered it in a way that just stuck with me. Basically, he said, enlightenment is really just a radical shift in identity. It's when we no longer identify with just this body and mind ego self, which everyone identifies with all of its thoughts, its programming, its conditioning. But it's when we begin to identify more with not only our eternal soul selves, but also the light, the energy, the consciousness that animates us. Not only that animates us, but when we begin to identify with that which animates everyone and everything. When you begin to have the awareness that, the same energy that's animating me is animating someone else. And a cat, a dog, a tree, a piano. And when that is actually Christ, that's called Christ consciousness, which comes from Christos consciousness, which means oneness consciousness. So it's more a radical shift in identifying with that part of you. So that's what he talked about, what enlightenment is. And so I'm going to do a guided journey today, as I mentioned before, later on, to help connect you to that higher level of consciousness and hopefully allow that to stick in a little bit easier in your subconscious mind today, so we can leave feeling more connected to that, to the truth that we're all a drop of God in an ocean of God here. We're all essentially God with trillions and billions of different faces. So, have you ever had a situation where you hear like a book or a movie, or what I want to step back. Oh, when I do this guided journey with, we're going to do, like I mentioned, that exercise in going from vision to reality. And the thing I wanted to share was that when I read that that was going to be our theme for this month, I immediately thought of the book that really propelled me on the spiritual journey, and this was back in the early to mid-90s. I read this book by Neil Donald Walsh called Conversations with God. As many of you maybe have heard that. When I would say that was one of the first books I read that really propelled me on the spiritual path. But I remember early on in that book, basically the major messages was that we are these born creators. And we create, how we create, there's 3 tools of creation: thought, word, and action. All creation first begins with a thought. And so then you put in the energy of speaking about it, and then you put it into action. But all creation first begins with a thought, and since we already are these creative beings, that's what we're going to do in this guided journey later today. But I want to step off on a different vein here and talk about something that maybe we can all relate to, and that is that if you've ever had, like, say, a book, or maybe it's a movie or a teacher that you keep hearing about. Maybe one person mentions it, a few days later, someone else mentions it, and then you hear it a third and fourth and fifth time, and you think, oh, I ought to pay attention to that. That happened to me recently with a book, and the contents of the book really kind of relate to my message today, so that's why I'm going to share a little bit about it. But has anyone ever heard of the book called The Afterlife of Billy Fingers? Yeah, good. How My Bad Boy Brother Proved to Me That There's Life After Death by Annie Kagan. And essentially what this book is about, it's a true story of Annie and her older brother, who is down and out. He's a drug addict. His life starts spiraling downward, and he ends up, and Annie both dearly loves him, but at the same time, some of his behaviors kind of irritate her and make her angry. So, but one day, he dies in a car accident, and she's absolutely distraught. She's saddened. She is in a depressed state for a few weeks. And one morning, when she's filled with sorrow and she's just waking up, she hears his voice, the voice of her older brother who died. And it said, "Annie, it's me. I have some things to tell you. Go get your journal and write down what I'm telling you." And so she does. And essentially what the book is about is he's explaining what the spiritual life is for him, his experiences in the spiritual realm. And also what earth life is like from the vantage point of the soul. And so she's writing these things down, but part of her thinks, gosh, am I really hearing this? Am I going crazy? So then he begins to give her some convincers, and he tells her things that are going to happen and then later do happen, or either later in the day or the next day. And then he tells her things to tell certain friends. Tell your one friend such and such. Tell your other friend such and such. And it just turns out the message doesn't make any sense to her, but it makes perfect sense to her friends. And so then she begins to become convinced that, okay, I really am talking to Billy. And the voice was really clear in her head. And there's a passage in here that I'd like to share with you. And it's early on, right after she first begins to hear his voice. And oftentimes, the voice would come when she's just waking up, because you're in a certain brainwave state then, a slower brainwave state when you're first waking up, and that's when communication from the other side can come in. That's when spirits tend to want to communicate with us, when we're in that dream state. But anyway, he wakes her up with these words. He said, "Good morning, baby sister. Even though I don't have a body anymore, I still feel like an individual. So much for disappearing into a sea of bliss. Don't misunderstand, I'm deep into the bliss experience, but I definitely haven't disappeared. What is bliss? Bliss is like being in love multiplied by 1,000. Okay, here we go. But it has nothing to do with anyone else. It's fulfilling in and of itself. On earth, you usually need someone to give you a reason to feel love. And that feeling usually has its ups and downs. But with bliss, there's no downside. And you don't need a reason for it. As your soul floats through this dimension, it's just natural to feel bliss. The kind of bliss that exists here isn't compatible with the human body, because bodies are subject to certain laws. And I'm sure there's laws here too, but they seem really lenient, easygoing, inclined in your favor. There's a lot of freedom going on here that you just don't have where you are. Earth, the conditions there, they traps you in limitation. For me, there seems to be no limitation, only potential. And that's because God or Spirit, or whatever you choose to call it, is undeniable where I am. Sometimes I believe the light rays are actually like the super thoughts of a supreme being. The light here makes visible that which is invisible on earth, the divine nature of all things, which is what this place is about. You want to know what the best cure for suffering is? An enlightened experience of it all. And what does that mean? It means finding the invisible within the visible. You are not only the person who walks this earth, you have a soul. And that's what the spiritual search is all about. I remember Adyashanti said, this human experience is almost like the greatest sleight of hand card trick. Yes, we have these body vehicles, but of course we're identified with it. But one thing we can never escape from, one day we won't be our body, but try as you might, you can't escape from the light energy and consciousness that animates our body. And that's the part that always gets lost, that divine part in this. And the search is, hey, can we connect to that in the back of our mind over and over again? And the interesting thing is, a couple of weeks after I read that, I had a client come in, and the client sat down and described to me a near-death experience he had. And he said it was like an accidental overdose. He was in a depressed state, and he was drinking, taking drugs, drinking more drugs, and before he knew it, he's out of his body. And he realizes, I'm dead. And then he found his consciousness starting to float higher and higher. And it went through a portal, a tunnel. And he found himself in a room. And how he described the room was the exact same way in that book. He said, if you take the most love that you felt in your entire life and you multiply that by 1,000, that is what this place felt like. And my two best friends that had passed and had died, I sat down in this chair because they were sitting in a chair right across from me, and they were smiling. All communication was telepathic. And my two dogs, my favorite dogs that died, that I had when I was a kid, they were sleeping right there. Now in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I asked him, did it kind of seem like a hazy, kind of vague dream, like an airy-fairy dream kind of a thing? And he said, no, that felt more real than you and I. He said it felt every bit as real as you and I sitting here right now. Just as real, just as solid. But in fact, it felt a little more real. Why? Because there was a knowing that this is what survives that body, and this is more who I am. There was an inner knowing of that. So that's why it felt more real than this. And so, and when he told me that, and then the other thing that he said was that, and I knew intuitively that I wasn't going to be able to stay there. I wanted to stay there more than anything, but I couldn't. I knew my time wasn't up, and I intuitively knew, because that's how information, when you're in that higher realm, it all drops in intuitively. He said, I knew I had to come back. I had more work to do here, more healing to do here, and so he came back. And interesting experiences he had, and I'm looking forward. I haven't yet worked with him, but I'm looking forward to guiding. I know he's going to have an interesting experience when we go within. But I wanted to share one other quote by Billy Fingers. That's his nickname he gave himself. Annie, his sister, didn't like that nickname, but he gave it to himself, so that's why she uses it. He says, in the spirit realm, humans don't usually get to feel the full magnificence of their lives while they're living it. They get caught up in lots of ideas, and they lose sight of the miracle that is their life. I hope people realize that they are not alone. And I wish people could feel their immortality, even for a second. It would change everything. The soul loves experience, and it knows that it can never be injured. Yet it's all part of the human plan for people to prefer pleasure to pain. And it is all part of the plan on this earth to have challenges. It's like we live our lives and we try to dodge these challenges, and that's human nature. We're supposed to do that. But this is the realm where there's loss. I don't want to speak the obvious, but it is. Death happens here. Sickness happens here. Loss. The other side, there is no loss. There's no death. There's no need for money. But this is the place where there's challenges. And so, but that's part of the plan. These challenges are here for us to test ourselves, to see how we're going to deal with them. These lives are kind of our practice ground to put into practice what we already know as souls. And that reminds me of a really interesting experience I had with a client who came in recently. This story, with her permission, I'm sharing it because it relates to exactly what we're talking about. She came in very distraught and full of sorrow because she had a stillborn a few months prior, several months prior. And she was filled with grief, but she was also filled with questions. Why did this have to happen to me? Am I supposed to learn anything from this? What's the purpose of my life? And so she want to do past life regression, and that's essentially a good process to go within. You'll only see a life or lives that is relevant to this life. That's why people often say, well, why would I see a past life, go to past life regression? Because I got so much to deal with in this life. But your own higher mind, basically it's all about connecting to your own higher mind and higher guidance, and that will show you a life that is, that eternal part of you is interested in growing and evolving, and it's very interested in you not living in a life that's stuck. So it's going to show you a life or lives that can help you get unstuck. And get clarity to questions you may have. And so she went within, and this is how it works. She saw herself in a life where she was a young boy who had a father and a mother and a younger sister. And life went really well until about the age of 12 when the dad got sick and died. He had to quit school, and he had to then quit school, and then he had to work. Had a lot, and felt heavy responsibility to take care of his mom and his younger sister. A couple of years later, though, mother falls ill and dies. A year or two after that, his sister gets into an accident and dies. So he feels very alone. He spent a lot of his time going to the pub, a local pub, and a lot of drinking. He ends up having a lot of friends, but they're all surface level friends, and he's very careful not to bring in anyone real too close, because he doesn't want to have too close of a relationship, because that might mean a lot of responsibilities, and it might mean loss and hurt. So it's like he kept them at a distance, but he lives his life, and he ends up dying of some kind of illness around the age of 60. When the soul left the body, it went up higher and higher, which usually happens 95% of the time. If it doesn't, then we get it to move up higher and higher. But she felt herself being pulled almost like an energy current, moving higher up towards a huge light. And one of the things she said was, "I'm moving towards a huge light." She gets up to that light, and she says, this is the light of Jesus. And the light of Jesus then enveloped her, brought her in, and she felt the most love she's ever felt, pure safety and security. And what happens in those moments is that her own vibration goes higher and higher. And when her own vibration went higher, then she has clarity, and she's now tuning in to that soul self, and then she's able to reflect on that life. And these are her words as she reflects on that life. "I really closed myself off. I was protecting myself from deep connections and attachments, and I didn't want to experience the hurt and loss and responsibility that came from all those attachments. But yet it brought a deep loneliness." And so, as I always ask, what would you do differently in that life if you're going to live that life all over again, only from the vantage point of the soul? And she said, "That's easy. I'd open myself up more to having close relationships with others, and I would have found deeper connections so we could support each other." And the soul lesson here was about opening myself up more after a loss and not avoiding relationships. And then something interesting happened. She said, "There's another soul here next to Jesus." And I had her tune into that soul. The more you tune in, the more insights drop in. She said, this is the soul of my son that died. And he's a high-level soul. And I said, "Is there any messages that he has for you or any messages between you two?" She says, "I want to ask him, why did you come here just to leave?" And then she just tuned in, and then telepathically she got that answer, and she said, "Oh, he's a high-level soul. He came here to help us grow," meaning her husband and her. The loss was an opportunity to deal with loss in a healthier way from that past life and move past it and to choose life again. And now I can see how his loss really sparked my spiritual journey of learning more about myself as a soul in the life beyond this one. That's typically often what happens. A lot of my clients that are on the spiritual journey, a lot of times people begin that journey after the loss of some loved one. It's not uncommon. Eckhart Tolle says we tend to grow the most personally and spiritually on the heels of some tragedy. So, I asked her, well, ask him if he's going to incarnate as a son again, or as a child again. She said, no, he's a high-level soul. He doesn't have to incarnate anymore. But if she knew that if she quieted herself down, her mind, she could communicate with him if she wanted to. So that was So that kind of relates to what we're all talking about. And as the theme of that is, as you go within, you can find answers to what your issue is. So now we're getting to this point where I'm going to begin to do a guided journey with you. Before we do that, though, I just want to make an announcement. If anyone is interested, I'm going to be doing a past life regression workshop. It's a 3-hour workshop. It's next Saturday from 10 to 1, $55. So I have flyers up there if you're interested in that, more information. Before we start this guided journey, I want to share something. Is when we're in that higher vibration level of consciousness, I'm going to be reading words that come from Suzanne Geisman. Has anyone heard of Suzanne Geisman? She's wonderful. For those of you that don't know her, she was a high-ranking naval commander that met with 4 different presidents. And when she retired, she found herself doing more of using her spiritual gifts of becoming an evidence-based medium. But what she does now is she also channels a very high group of souls that either calls themselves or she calls them Sanaya. And you can sign up on her website, SuzanneGeisman.com. Just these daily pearls of wisdom that really help reconnect you to your soul's vantage point and to source energy. So they're all designed to help reawaken that divine within you. And they're only like a paragraph long every day, but they can come in your email if you sign up for them. So while we're doing this guided journey, that's what I'm going to read some words from her that'll really be relevant to all of us. So to begin this inner journey, just let yourself either, get in a meditative pose or just however you want to do it to be comfortable. And imagine that you just place a circle of light around you, about an arm's length away. And I'm going to play this tone. And while you're imagining the circle of light around you, you just draw a dark curtain on the outside of that, just so that for the next 20 minutes or so, actually it's going to be the next 17 minutes, let any distraction, anything that might serve as a distraction, let that all fade to non-existence. And that might be anything in work life, home life, things on the to-do list. Let that fade to non-existence. You can pick it all up again later, afterwards, in 20 minutes if you want. But for the next 20 minutes, let yourself only focus on that which, in my words, and on that which is on the inside of the circle of light, that which is in your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual energy bodies, and of course be open to receive any information that would like to drop in from your own higher mind or higher guidance system. So now, in just this moment, see or feel or imagine yourself walking down a hallway, and just give yourself the gift to imagine that this next 15 minutes will be, or 17 minutes are very, very important 17 minutes, and really be focused. The key for this inner journey is to be anchored in the present moment. And so in this moment, you just see, feel, or sense yourself walking down a hallway, feeling your feet as you're walking down this hallway. And up ahead is a stairway that goes down 10 stairs. In a few moments, I'll count you down that stairway. It's a special stairway in the sense that with every stair that you hit with your foot in your mind's eye, you sink yet another level deeper in physical and mental relaxation. And the closer that we get down to that first level stair, the further away we get from this physical realm of time and space and form. And the more you begin to drop down deeper and deeper into yourself, ultimately tuning into a more permanent part of you. So I'm going to count you down the stairs now. You can grab a hold of a railing to steady yourself if you'd like. But feel your foot on every stair. So let's drop from 10 and drop down to 9. Yet another level deeper in physical and mental relaxation, you drop down to 8. Deeper and deeper, more and more relaxed, you drop down to 7. Letting the physical world fade behind you as you drop down to 6. Going deeper into yourself as you drop down to 5. The physical world continues to fade behind you as you drop down to 4. Going deeper into yourself as you drop down to 3. Deeper and deeper down to 2. Deeper, deeper down to 1. And you now step on off into a beautiful garden. As you step deeper into the beautiful garden here, you can kick off your shoes and just feel the soft grass beneath your feet. And you find yourself being drawn to an area of the garden that has some very large and fragrant flowers. The closer you walk towards these flowers, the more of that perfume, fragrant smell that you can smell. In fact, you can even see yourself walking up to one of these flowers with your hand outstretched and now feeling the soft velvety petals of that flower between your thumb and fingers. And then you can even place your nose in the center of that flower and inhale that beautiful aroma, allowing that perfume fragrance to flood through your whole being. But now in a few moments, I'm going to play a tone. And when you hear the sound of the tone, that will be a signal for you to drift on up outside of yourself and then look down at yourself from a third person point of view. It'll be as if you're just lifting on up and looking down and seeing yourself down there, enjoying yourself in the garden. 3, 2, and now 1. And you now lift on up and you look down and you get an impression of yourself down there in the garden. You don't have to see it clearly. Even a vague impression is good enough. And then you find your consciousness beginning to lightly and freely begin to drift up higher and higher so that you can look down and see more and more of that garden down there. And soon you can see a mile or so around that garden, and you can see that your body is getting much smaller as your consciousness begins to float higher and higher. And soon, though, you're noticing that you can see for hundreds of miles all around, and you can't even see your body anymore down there. And as you drift higher still, you just temporarily leave down there your body and mind identity, and you more begin to tune into and identify with that light and energy and consciousness that animates this body. You more begin to tune into and identify with your soul self of pure consciousness as you lightly and freely drift higher and higher. So high now that you can see the curvature of the earth. You now leave the earth's atmosphere. You enter outer space. You turn around and see that earth down there getting smaller and smaller as you drift higher, further, deeper into space. That earth down there now looks so small, it looks as though it could be about the size of a golf ball down there. As you float higher still, becomes the size of a pea, and then the size of a tiny grain of sand. And as you drift higher still, that earth just completely disappears. And you turn around and look up, and you continue to drift higher, further, deeper into space, away from where that earth was. And way in the distance, there's a light. In your mind's eye, you simply create a light. This is the light of source energy. This is the light of home, home in the ultimate sense. And as you find yourself drifting and floating closer and closer to that light, you begin to feel a growing sense of warmth, a growing sense of peace, a growing sense of well-being that continues to grow stronger as you get closer and closer to that light. It's as though you're magnetically drawn to this light, just as this light is magnetically drawn to you. And it is as though you are floating towards that light on an energy current that guides you and pulls you all the way up towards its own very source. And soon now you're beginning to reach the outer reaches of this light, feeling an even stronger sense of calm and peace and well-being. And you now allow the outer reaches of this light to now lovingly envelope you and now pull you into its center, so that you as this energy being just merge into the very heart and center of this light of source energy. And you simply rest here. You simply rest here and you begin to soak in now these high vibrations like a sponge, allowing them to saturate your whole being. And you give the gift of your full presence to this light of source energy. And you allow the light of source energy to give you the gift of its full presence. And you now begin to breathe in and actually feel certain specific qualities of this light of source energy. One of the qualities of this light of source energy is of deep peace. So in this moment, you now breathe in those vibrations of source energy, which is deep peace. You breathe it right into the heart center on the inhalation. On the exhalation, letting the vibrations of deep peace simply flood through your whole being, feeling what peace feels like. And recording what peace feels like, because we're going to compare that now with a different quality of source energy. And this is the quality of joy. So in this moment, you now breathe in the vibrations of joy right into the heart center on the inhalation, and allowing the vibrations of joy to flood through your whole being on the exhalation. And all you have to do to think of the most joyous time in your whole life for just a moment, and you feel the raw energy of that. That will help you feel joy. And if you pay very close attention, you can even feel the subtle difference between the vibrations of peace and joy. And so you tune in and feel that. And now the next quality that we really want to tune into is the quality that is not really that easily felt in the human experience. So really soak it in now. This is the qualities of source energy, which is unconditional love and acceptance. So as you now breathe in those vibrations of unconditional love and acceptance, you breathe it in the heart center, and on the exhalation, letting that flood through your whole being. You can even picture or imagine your own guides or angels beaming unconditional love and acceptance right into your heart center. And then the final quality of source that you take in is the vibrations of pure safety and security. So in this moment, you now breathe in those vibrations of pure safety and security on the inhalation, and on the exhalation, letting those vibrations simply flood through every cell, molecule, and atom of your being and all of the space in between. And now you simply relax your focus and just breathe in a combination of all of these qualities of source energy. Breathing in a combination of deep peace and of joy and of unconditional love and acceptance and pure safety and security. And now, because you are an energy being that comes from this source energy, we're going to take it one step further for just the next few moments. So for the next few moments, just imagine that you're breathing in so much of these high vibration qualities of source energy that the boundaries between you and this source energy just begin to melt away for a few moments. So that you as this energy being just melt into and merge as one in this infinite ocean of source energy. Kind of like an individual wave that just melts back into the ocean, becoming one with that ocean, before re-emerging as its own unique individual wave again. And you never lose this presence of awareness, and you never lose this awareness of presence, because this is fundamental to your being. But you simply feel what it feels like to expand out now on all sides into infinity. So with this tone, you now expand out to the right into infinity. Feeling that and going deeper into that, you expand out now to the left into eternity. Feeling that, going deeper into that, You expand above you to infinity. You expand below you to eternity. You expand in front of you to infinity. You expand behind you to eternity. You expand out on all sides simultaneously into infinity. So in only this moment, there is no more up, there's no down, no here, no there, no sideways, no time, no space. There's only here, only now, just this oneness. And as you follow the tone into the silence, allow that to enable you to relax deeper and deeper into your own present moment experience of resting and basking in and as this source energy of pure creative potential. And while you're resting, basking in and as this light of source energy, you look down to where the earth used to be, and instead of the earth being there, there's a line. Duality is now created. There's you in this line down there. And this is the timeline of your life. The future is way off to the right, the past is to the left, the present is straight below. And allow your consciousness just to continue to steep and rest and bask in this light of source energy. And while you do that, you begin to float all the way over to the very far left of this timeline, the very beginning of the expression of your life, the very beginning. And I'm now going to read these words. Bring it on, you say, when you are ready for something new, whether it be a challenge, whether it be something fun and exciting. And with enthusiasm, you invite a new experience. Do you know this is how you felt before you came into this body? You knew you would face challenges. You knew you would have fun and excitement. You also knew that life in a human body is not all grins and giggles. It is one of the most challenging experiences Source takes on as a soul, playing a role. And yet, as Source expressing itself in one of its limitless ways, your soul always also knew that it would always be in perfect order. All would be. For you are just interacting with other aspects of the self. Even if some of your roles forget who you are. And so you, the soul, said, bring it on, and here you are. And if you're suffering, pray to Source. Bring it on. Bring on the remembrance that I and the Source are ultimately one in whatever way that makes sense to me now. You are so very loved. And as you look down at that young self, you see yourself growing up a few months. So you see a 2-month-old infant version of yourself. And if I ask the question, ideally, we're talking, should you ideally have been made to feel loved, wanted, valued, safe, and secure? Of course. Is that young person down there worthy of love? Of course. Are they good enough as they are? Of course. That is the core of your being. Are you deserving of success and love in your life? Of course. That's just truth. All we're concerned of is truth. And now, while you're basking in this higher vibration, you now begin to float over to the very present and future self. And here is where you can begin to create that next best, grandest version of yourself. You create a version of yourself down there in which it is as though your body and mind system is like a clear vessel for the brilliance of your soul self to shine through. Totally unimpeded by any negative programming or conditioning that would pull you back. And you see yourself now going for a walk, and we're going to call it a blessing walk. You see yourself down there in every moment, everywhere your eyes look, you give a silent blessing. You see yourself going for a walk, blessing a tree, blessing the snow, blessing the sunshine, blessing a person, a stranger, a dog. These are all aspects at some level of your own self, and you see yourself being a vessel of love and compassion. Sanaya says, once you awaken to the purity of who you are, beyond your body character, the life can fully begin. And life is an acronym for love in full expression. We come from love, we go back to love, and we are beings of love while we're here. You see yourself down there creating that next best version of yourself. And while you're doing that, you notice what that feels like. You feel, if there were a word or two that could best describe what does that feel like? What does that feel like? Tune into that. And that is what we're going to bring back with us today. So this time now, I'm going to count you up from 1 up to 5. As I reach the count of 5, you can allow yourself to emerge feeling refreshed, alive, alert, feeling better in every way. 1, coming back together, body, mind, and soul all together as one in your present body. 2, leaving behind any heavy, dense energies in the forms of thoughts, feelings, beliefs, perspectives that no longer benefit or serve you. Instead, you bring back with you now the thoughts, the feelings, the beliefs, the perspectives that do serve you and are based in a higher truth. And you now begin to feel the full support of the chair as I count 3. Feeling arms and legs in the chair, feeling body in the chair, feeling breath in the body as I count 4. Feeling breath in the body. Breath is the link between the body and this eternal part of you. So from this day forward, as you tune into the breath, you'll remember to tune into this eternal free part of you. And now with that, take 1 more nice, deep, purifying and cleansing breath. And 5. And wide awake. And welcome back to this dimension. So I want to thank you all for giving me your attention. Once again, if you want any more information or interested in the Past Life Regression Workshop, feel free to take some information over there. But it's been an honor, a joy, a pleasure to be with you here today. Thank you.
All right, what I like everybody to do is just take a deep breath. One more. I don't know about you, but I needed that to get back into my body. Thank you for that experience. That's one of the reasons why I've been coming to this place since the early 90s, is because I always get some nugget or some wisdom. Every pivotal moment of my life where I've had some consciousness expansion happened here, either with an event or listening to a speaker. So I love this place. So that is one of the reasons why I'm going to be asking you in just a moment to contribute to keeping this place open. Lake Harris Spiritual Community does not have any other sources of funds except for the generous donations of everybody that comes here. Your donations help us keep the lights on, keep the insurance paid, keep the building open so we can continue to bring speakers like Eric and have events that happen throughout the week and the month here. So appreciate your donations, and the ushers will be passing the basket. Thank you. Oh, give what you can. If you can't give anything today, consider going to our website and setting up an automatic donation. So.
Into another world where all is still. Majestic silence calls me and I will walk on through the looking glass, reaching for a place my eyes can't see, wandering in the nighttime where I'll be at dawn, walking on and on through the green fields and the minefields to learn how love feels on this ocean, this mirror of my heart, the great devotion game. Beauty beckons like a pot of gold. Once upon a time I walked a road like this, through the looking glass, crossing the dark waters of my loneliness, living for the glimpses of life's holiness, through the looking glass. Stars don't have to tell me where to go. I've lived enough to know I want the whole of love.
Got the green light. Okay, it's on. If you'll help me bless the offering by repeating after me. God's perfect love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I give, all that I receive, and all that I am. And so it is. Well, as our tradition is to circle up at the end of the service, I'd like you to do that. I think we've got enough people to circle up around the middle. And then Eric will lead us in a closing.
Can we do it?
Okay,
We need to get closer.
Do like this, arms length, everybody spread out like so.
All right.
All right, we can do it.
All right. We can do it. We did it. We're connected. We always were. May we continue to grow from ignorance to wisdom, from restlessness to peace, and may we continue to grow in awareness of our true nature, of these magnificent eternal soul beings that are based in love. We come from love, we go back to love, and we are beings of love while we're here. Om. Peace. And amen. All right. Thank you. Thank you.